the way down.
Larry 1. Larry. Did you hear that, Adam?
Listen up, because in 1959, something happened on American television that would change everything we knew about Westerns. A family of 4 men on a ranch captured the hearts of over 400 million viewers worldwide and held them hostage for 14 straight years. I'm talking about Bonanza, the show that made Sunday nights sacred in American households. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. Bonanza did not end because ratings dropped or because audiences got bored. It ended because of a tragedy that happened in a hospital room in 1972. One death destroyed everything, and NBC pulled the plug on the most successful Western in television history. Before we dive in the video, please subscribe to our channel. So in this video, I am going to walk you through the entire rise and fall of Bonanza, from its groundbreaking premiere in 1959 to its heartbreaking end in 1973. And I am not just talking about what happened on screen. I am talking about the behind-the-scenes drama that tore the cast apart years before the show ended. We are going to answer 3 burning questions that fans have been asking for decades. First, how did Bonanza become the #1 show in America and stay there for years while competing against television legends? Second, what really happened behind the scenes that caused one of the original stars to walk away at the peak of the show's success? And third, why did NBC cancel a show that was still pulling in millions of viewers every single week? But first, let me give you some context on just how massive this thing was at its peak. Because if you were alive in the 1960s, you already know that missing Bonanza on Sunday night was basically a sin in most American households. Alright, so picture this. It is 1958, and a television producer named David Dort is sitting in his office trying to figure out how to make a Western that does not look like every other Western on TV. Now you have to understand the landscape at this time. Westerns were everywhere on television. I mean, everywhere. Gunsmoke was dominating CBS. Have Gun Will Travel was a hit. Wagon Train was pulling huge numbers. There were literally over 30 Western shows on television at the same time. The market was completely saturated with cowboys and gunfights and saloon brawls, so Dort had a problem. How do you stand out when everyone is doing the same thing? And here is where his genius kicked in. He decided to make a Western that was not really about the West at all. It was about family. He created the Cartwright family. A father named Ben and his 3 sons, Adam and Hoss, and little Joe. Each son had a different mother who had died, which gave them all unique personalities and backgrounds. The show would focus on their relationships and their bonds and their conflicts with each other. The gunfights and the outlaws would be secondary to the family drama. But Dort did not stop there. He convinced NBC to do something absolutely insane for 1959. He convinced them to broadcast Bonanza in full color. Now you have to understand what a massive gamble this was. Most American households did not even own color televisions yet. Only about 3% of homes had color sets in 1959. But NBC was owned by RCA, which manufactured color televisions. So there was a business reason behind this creative decision. If people wanted to see the beautiful Ponderosa Ranch in all its glory, they would need to buy a color TV. Bonanza became a commercial for RCA televisions without anyone realizing it. The premiere happened on September 12, 1959. And here's the thing. It was not an immediate hit. The first season struggled in the ratings. Bonanza was up against some serious competition, and American audiences were not sure what to make of this different kind of Western. But NBC believed in the show and kept it on the air. They moved it to Sunday nights at 9 p.m. and everything changed. Part 1. The Rise. So here is how Bonanza went from struggling newcomer to the biggest show in America. And this is crucial to understanding the whole story. By the second season, audiences started to connect with the Cartwright family in a way they had never connected with Western characters before. Ben Cartwright, played by Lorne Greene, was not just a rancher. He was the ideal father figure that America wanted. He was wise and fair and strong, but also gentle and loving with his sons. In an era when television dads were either absent or comedic, Lorne Greene gave audiences something different. And then there were the sons. Pernell Roberts played Adam, the intellectual oldest son who was educated and sophisticated. Dan Blocker played Hoss, the gentle giant with a heart of gold who provided comic relief but also deep emotional moments. And Michael Landon played little Joe, the young hothead who was always getting into trouble and romancing the ladies. These four men became the family that America adopted as their own. The Ponderosa Ranch itself became a character in the show. This was not some dusty little homestead. The Ponderosa was over 1,000 square miles of prime Nevada territory. It was filmed on location at Lake Tahoe, and the scenery was absolutely stunning, especially in color. Every week, audiences got to escape to this beautiful world where problems could be solved, and justice always won, and family always came first. By 1964, something incredible happened. Bonanza became the #1 show in all of American television. And it was not just #1 for a week or a month. It dominated the ratings for 3 consecutive years from 1964 to 1967. We're talking about beating everything. Variety shows and sitcoms and dramas. Nothing could touch the Cartwrights on Sunday nights. And here is what made this even more impressive. The show was competing directly against The Ed Sullivan Show on CBS. Ed Sullivan was a television institution. He introduced America to Elvis Presley and the Beatles, but when Bonanza hit its peak, even Ed Sullivan could not compete. Families were choosing the Ponderosa over the biggest variety show in the country. The merchandise was everywhere too: Bonanza lunchboxes and toys and books and clothing. There was a Bonanza restaurant chain called Bonanza Steakhouse that still exists today. The theme song became one of the most recognizable pieces of music in television history. That opening sequence with the burning map and the 4 Cartwrights riding toward the camera became iconic. Kids would gather around the television set just to watch that opening. Let me give you some numbers to understand how big this was. At its absolute peak, Bonanza was being watched by over 400 million people in 97 different countries. It was translated into dozens of languages. The Cartwright family was more famous internationally than most world leaders. NBC was printing money every single week. But here is the thing about reaching that kind of success: cracks start to form that nobody sees from the outside. And behind the scenes of television greatest Western, a storm was brewing that would eventually tear everything apart. Part 2. The trouble behind the scenes. Alright, so this is where the story gets really interesting, because the fall of Bonanza did not start in 1973 when it got canceled. It started way back in 1965, and most people do not even realize it. See, one of the original Cartwrights was deeply unhappy from almost the very beginning. Pernell Roberts, who played Adam, the oldest and most educated son, absolutely hated being on the show. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, he was on the #1 show in America making great money. What could he possibly have to complain about? And that is exactly what most people thought at the time. But Roberts had serious artistic problems with Bonanza that went beyond ego or money. Roberts was a trained Shakespearean actor. He came from the legitimate theater, and he had dreams of doing serious dramatic work. Instead, he was stuck on a television western wearing the same black outfit every week and delivering lines he thought were simplistic and morally absolute. He publicly criticized the show in interviews, calling it bland and saccharine. He complained that the scripts lacked depth and that his character was underwritten. But here is what really bothered him. Roberts was deeply uncomfortable with how the show handled race and social issues. Bonanza was set in the 1860s during the Civil War era, but the show rarely dealt with the actual conflicts of that time in a meaningful way. Roberts felt the show was too safe and too unwilling to challenge its audience. He wanted stories about the real struggles of that period, and he felt like he was participating in a fantasy that ignored history. The other cast members did not appreciate his public complaints. Lorne Greene and Dan Blocker were professionals who showed up and did their work without drama. Michael Landon was ambitious and hungry and saw Bonanza as his stepping stone to bigger things. None of them understood why Roberts could not just appreciate what they had. The tension on set was real, and it affected the dynamic of the show. In 1965, after 6 seasons, Pernell Roberts did the unthinkable. He quit the #1 show on television. He walked away from the Ponderosa and never looked back. This was shocking at the time. You did not just leave a hit show, but Roberts had reached his breaking point, and no amount of money could keep him there. The producers had a problem. Adam Cartwright was a major character. How do you explain his absence? They could not kill him off because that would be too dark for the show tone. So they simply had Adam leave the Ponderosa to pursue other interests. He was mentioned occasionally, but never seen again. The show became about 3 Cartwrights instead of 4. And here is the fascinating thing. Bonanza did not collapse after Roberts left. In fact, the ratings stayed strong. The show adjusted and kept going. Dan Blocker Haas became even more central to the stories. Michael Landon Little Joe got more screen time and more complex storylines. Lorne Greene held everything together as the patriarch. The Ponderosas survived losing one son. But the Roberts departure revealed something important about the show. It could survive losing a cast member, but only as long as the core family remained intact. That lesson would become tragically relevant 7 years later. Part 3. The death that ended everything. Now we have to talk about what really killed Bonanza. And this is the hardest part of the story to tell, because it involves real tragedy, not just television business decisions. By 1972, Bonanza was in its 13th season. The show was still pulling solid ratings, but it was no longer the dominant force it had been in the mid-1960s. The television landscape was changing. Audiences wanted different kinds of shows. The Western genre itself was fading in popularity, but Bonanza was still profitable and still beloved. NBC had no immediate plans to cancel it. The Cartwright family was an institution, and you do not throw away an institution lightly. The plan was to keep the show going for at least a few more seasons, and then give it a proper send-off. Then on May 13, 1972, everything changed forever. Dan Blocker died. He was only 43 years old. The cause was a pulmonary embolism that occurred following gallbladder surgery. It was sudden and unexpected, and it devastated everyone connected to the show. Dan Blocker was not just an actor playing a role. He was the heart and soul of Bonanza. Haas Cartwright was the character that audiences loved most. He was the gentle giant who would rather help someone than fight them. He provided warmth and humor and emotional depth. Dan Blocker brought authenticity to that role because by all accounts, he was exactly like Haas in real life. His co-stars loved him. The crew loved him. The fans loved him. Michael Landon was especially close to Blocker. They had worked together for 13 years and developed a genuine friendship that went beyond the cameras. When Blocker died, Landon was reportedly inconsolable. He lost not just a co-worker, but a brother. The producers faced an impossible decision. How do you continue Bonanza without Haas? Unlike the Addams situation where the character could simply leave, Haas was too central to the show identity. Viewers would not accept a recasting. You cannot replace a gentle giant, but you also cannot just pretend he never existed. NBC decided to move forward with a 14th season despite the loss. They brought in new characters, including a previously unknown son of Adam Cartwright, to try to fill the void. They adjusted storylines and shifted focus, but everyone involved knew that something essential was missing. The 14th season premiered in September 1972, and you could feel the absence. The chemistry was gone. The warmth was gone. The family dynamic that had made Bonanza special for over a decade was shattered. Ratings declined significantly. Viewers did not want to watch a Ponderosa without Haas. In January 1973, NBC made the announcement. Bonanza would not be renewed for a 15th season. The show that had dominated American television for over a decade was officially over. The final episode aired on January 16, 1973. There was no grand finale, no special send-off, just a regular episode that happened to be the last one. After 431 episodes and 14 seasons, the Cartwrights rode off into the sunset.